I don't know how many recruitment cycles they need to get it sorted out. Like at the moment, take Fekitoa, right? So Fekitoa, like for what he's being paid, and that's important. I know like it's important to understand that if you have 400, 450, 500 to spend on your non-Irish qualified player, and you do spend that, they need to be making big impacts in games. You know what I mean? To such an extent that against Zebra or the Dragons, or even Cardiff, right? Like Faletau in that game against Munster was just head and shoulders above everybody else, and played a huge role in Cardiff winning. Now the Cardiff didn't win their other two games, but in that game he stood up, and you could see, right, there's our kind of marquee player. For Fekitoa so far in the 3 games, he hasn't taken any game by the scruff of the neck, and he is being paid a lot of money. So who made that decision? You know, when you look at the front five and the how poor the resources are in certain positions there, you just go, like, why would you spend money on somebody? Okay, he's a big name, right? But it's a long time since he's been at his best. Unless you believe that your environment can get him back to his best, well then don't take that risk. So, like, that's the challenge for me is who's looking at the big picture here and saying, right, you know, in 3 years' time, our squad's going to look like that. And we're going to be very strong in these positions, and we're going to have this depth, etc., etc. And we're going to play that type of rugby. Is that happening, or is it all, you know, things are bad? And look, I'm not saying this is happening, but the sense for me on the outside is that some decisions have been made purely to quieten the fans, or to, you know, to just, you know, fill a gap, without really having a clear idea where Munster want to go. And again, maybe that's all being agreed and everyone understands, but from the outside, it doesn't look joined up.
It's like, it's almost comical how that sounds like you're talking about Man United, honestly.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, you talk about history there. Munster have history, but what's their recent history? Like, they haven't been a great team for 5-10 years, maybe. And it's almost surprising that we're still surprised that they're not a great team. They haven't been for a while. This is the level they're at. It's been coming for a long time. And I do hope it improves. But I even think on the Fekitoa one, I didn't see that much excitement even from the fans around that. I think the fans would have been more excited by a 110, 115 kg hooker from South Africa, who maybe they didn't even know about, but felt it fit the profile. Like, the Munster fans they're not dumb. Like, they look at their squad and they can see the deficiencies. And yeah, it feels like we're going to come back to the recruitment every single weekend. You're right, Ciarán. We can't just keep repeating that. But I think Munster fans probably deserve better than that. It is really important to highlight the good bits, because the young lads did make an impression again. And this is a recurring theme now for the last 3 or 4 years, from a point where there just wasn't that optimism. Ruan Quinn is clearly an elite prospect. He's only 18. He's got to have time to develop and learn loads. Edwin Adogbo, 19, like, looks physically ready for it, making lovely breakdown turnovers and putting himself about with some real intent. I thought Patrick Campbell had a similar mindset towards the game about going and it's, you know, making an impact on it and doing good things in the game and being present and getting off his wing. Connor Phillips, his first touch in senior rugby was a lovely one, goes up and claims a high ball and asserts himself that way. So that's excellent. But in 3 years' time, how many starts are they going to have for Munster? Is it going to be another Thomas Ahern where you're struggling to get starts? We saw him in that Emerging Ireland game. There's a guy who's been ready to explode for ages. And yeah, back him. Just back him to go and be a key player for you, even if he's a bit younger.
Yeah, just okay. I totally agree. Man United is a very similar story, but the one from a rugby point of view, who I would always kind of feel were like Munster, were Leicester Tigers. Right, Leicester Tigers, you know, a club with tradition, actually kind of built in the same tradition Munster was. You know, uncompromising forward pack, horrible place to go and play, great fans, etc., and totally lost their way, like completely lost their way. And in fairness, Borthwick came in, and Borthwick obviously is a good coach. But what I love about looking at what they did was his real deep understanding of the type of player he wanted, right? And look at it's well known that they really use data to drive recruitment, and you know, they've found some absolute gems, you know, in the transfer market, who weren't big names when they got there, but are big names now. But it's aligned to how they want to play and what a Leicester player should look like. And they've turned around. I know they lost the weekend to Saracens, but they've turned around. They're back in the top 4 in England. And like that's kind of, I don't think this gradual little bits, putting plasters on things, will actually really move Munster enough to be able to catch back up with the others. I think it has to be quite drastic. And maybe they're going through that now, whatever. But that's the challenge is to be absolutely ruthless. And like Borthwick got rid of a lot of players who were, seen as being, good Leicester players and stuff, but he didn't feel they fitted the model that he wanted. And that hasn't happened in Munster for a long time. There's been no real clear out, despite a lack of success, and that's probably what it looks like on the field. It breeds complacency, which is rarely a good thing in sport.